You explaining the most embarrassing draft night in history. Go on, like, comment, subscribe, grab, and get your email.
NFL history. Let's start with the real. 'Twas the night before Draftmas, and was quiet in the hall. Not a player was stirring, not Will or Jihad can ball. So as players sat by their phones, waiting for call or sign, one unfortunate man got the most embarrassing
Bro, why would he do that?
draft night
He made a whole thing legendary.
all time. But, my dear viewer, if you wish to learn how Shedeur fell,
Wasn't even that good.
we will have to go back like we do oh so well. So to begin this tale of the most dramatic fall in NFL history, let's start with the real rising action. It's 2023. Deion Sanders and crew had just did Colorado Buffalo and had done something that Colorado hadn't witnessed in a long time. Win the Pac-12? Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. For the first time in forever, the Buffalo had a little hype, a little hope even. Deion promised to come in and change things, and he had shown what he did at Jackson State, and in miraculous fashion would come in and do what we will all come to know and love, which is overpromise and underdeliver. Yes, they beat a ranked TCU team that was only ranked riding on the
They're only ranked 17th. Come on.
Tails of their previous championship appearance and nothing else. Yes, they would then roll past Nebraska and sneak out a win against Colorado State before getting windmill dunked by Oregon, and maybe in their best
Windmill dunked by Oregon
game of the entire year took on a highly ranked Trojans team to the wire, requiring USC to recover a late
48-21.
onside kick to stop a comeback attempt before in one last showing of grit would beat Arizona State on the back of a game-winning field goal and then would lose out the rest of their season. But in the midst of all that, Coach Prime was ringing the bell despite the losses that he had two of the best players in college football. His two sons, Shedeur and Travis. What's that? Travis isn't his son? Oh, he has another son, Shiloh? Why doesn't he talk about him more? That's aside the point. Deion was convinced
No, we
that
don't care about Shiloh.
these two
Nah, I'm just playing.
were some of the best players in college football, with one of which being an actual unicorn who
I think
played
Shiloh did get drafted too.
at a high level as wide receiver, as well as being one of the most dangerous corners in the college football landscape, and just being an absolute menace, and the other one being a quarterback who could dice up defenses, like when he threw for 510 yards against TCU, 394 against Nebraska, heck, 400 yards in that loss to Stanford, and all this while maintaining a high level of accuracy, with one little asterisk, which is his seeming lack of escapability and taking a lot of sacks, which in one interview he even made sure to mention his offensive line's inability to block for him, which we're going to circle back around to later. So despite the 4-8 season, Colorado fans, players, and head coach Deion Sanders all had a lot of optimism going into their next season, but with drastically more realistic expectations than the season prior. And then it would be, well, admittedly, what I think we would all call a hard to evaluate season. Sure, Deion and ESPN were convinced that Shedeur was a top 5 pick, as well as Travis Hunter, which was confusing because on one hand, Travis
for sure was gonna be like a number 1 pick.
Everything we hoped he would be. He would lead the Buffs in reception yards pretty much every other game this season and was a key piece on a much improved defense. I mean, you almost can't put into words how good he was without...
I'm pretty sure they worked that offense around Travis, because Travis wouldn't have gone if they didn't.
Just watching a highlight tape, but I'll say this, if he were just a wide receiver or just a corner, he would still be considered a first-round pick, and the fact that he was playing both at that high of a level while remaining humble and likable guy in his interviews, with the only thing going against his character being random drama from weirdos on the internet hyper-analyzing his girlfriend's actions.
That's funny though.
While he was actively winning the Heisman, that's how far people had to go to try to dig something up on him. So, like, did he live up to the hype? Absolutely. And I'm your typical cynic, and I don't buy into a lot of guys' hypes, but man, you couldn't not like what you saw on tape. And everything that Deion and ESPN was saying about this guy was right on the mark. But on the flip side, I don't think you could have said that about Shedeur. Was he putting up good numbers? Absolutely. He had one of the best completion percentages of all time at 74% across 477 attempts. He threw for 37 touchdowns and only 10 picks, so his numbers look good, but outside of that, it was underwhelming. I mean, when you watched him, you would
I'm not trying to
absolutely
be rude, but they're playing abysmal teams. Utah 4-5.
not
Come
think
on,
that
man.
he was bad.
Obviously
But
couldn't do
if you
good.
knew football, you're talking about an offense custom curated to make him look as good as possible.
Right, yep.
With a head coach that wanted nothing more than for his success and brought in players to bolster him specifically to your offense while throwing to a literal Heisman receiver and still throwing the ball when you have a large lead to continue to pad your stats. And when you watched him, you just kind of went like, yeah, he's pretty solid. He still took a lot of needless sacks, and if a play broke down, he did not look like the best athlete on the field. And by Nebraska week, when you watched him, I think myself and many others mentally moved him out of at least the top 5 conversation, but for many, all the way out of the first round, as it was clear that that it factor wasn't there. But where people would get frustrated is that Dion, Colorado fans, and ESPN were feeding us the sauce that he was still going to be drafted top 5 in the league and should be the highest on everyone's board, while those who wanted to believe in him were starting to just not be able to. Leading to the end of the season after a very
pretty high mine.
flat showing in their bowl game, going out on a low note, and then the pre-draft process brought us even more troubles. When at the combine, he refused to throw, which for guys who have shown an elite arm all year wouldn't kill you, but when you're invited pretty much to show that you have an elite arm, it doesn't help whatsoever. And then the reports started coming out about an absolute disaster class from the interviewing process. He was trying to dictate who would draft him and who wouldn't. He allegedly was making GMs feel small and having an overall sense of entitlement about him, according to reports. Now, it's not uncommon for certain reports to come out, and most people take them with a grain of salt, as it can sometimes be GMs trying to hopefully...
The interview's in the Honda right here. This right here. Do you know who my dad is?
Knock somebody down a spot or two, so they don't have to trade up to go get them. And the Sanders crew seemed pretty confident that that was the case, as we got to draft day, where Shedeur, with a glistening chain in a custom-built room marked with the word legendary everywhere, was prepared for a day that would in fact be legendary, just not the one Shedeur was expecting. You see, the general consensus by talking heads is that Shedeur was still a top 5 picks, and the Browns and Giants were in desperate need of a quarterback, as well as the Titans, but it was apparent that they were going to be taking Cam Ward with that first pick. And as the draft went underway, Cam Ward went first, fulfilling expectations. Then Travis Hunter would go to the Jaguars after the Browns traded down, fulfilling that expectation. But with the 3rd pick, the Giants selected edge rusher Abdul Carter. For what it's worth, he is worthy of that pick, but then you get
for sure
the 5th pick, and the Browns select Mason Graham,
that guy's trash,
tackle. And then the Raiders pick up Ginty. Jets, Saints, Cowboys, all these dark horse teams that might have picked up a quarterback if they felt that far, passed for other pieces until the Giants, late in the first round, trade up, and after a long slide, they select Jackson Dart. As we leave the first round, Shedeur still on the board. Now, this wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. It's a little embarrassing because you had the chain and you had the whole setup, which is something that first rounders can sometimes do, but is a little goofy if you're a day 2 guy. But then day 2 comes.
Man, that's a huge ass chain. What the fuck?
Sometimes do, but is a little goofy if you're a day 2 guy. But then day 2 comes. The Saints pick up Tyler Show, the only quarterback for that round, as Shedeur has now slid 2 rounds down from where he thought, which is past expectations of even critics like myself. But what surprises even more was round 3. 2 quarterbacks would be drafted, Jalen Milroe to the Seahawks and Dylan Gabriel to the Browns. Shedeur has now fallen in historic fashion all the way out of day 2 of the draft, and on day 3 it gets worse as round 4 passed with no phone call. And I don't care what you thought of Shedeur going into this process. Even the most skeptical people I knew didn't think he would fall this far down, as now the main question was what the hell was happening in those interviews for him to fall. Many reports have come out that he was wearing his headphones, taking FaceTime calls, and having music blasting, but even that, to go from a projected top 5 pick to barely getting drafted in the first
It'll be fine though.
5 rounds might be one of the most embarrassing and one of the greatest
best place he can go
falls of all time.
You talk about 2 dogs, 1
Like, comment, subscribe, garner, catcher, and he has huge upside. So if doesn't do good, not like it matters. He was drafted in that 5th round.
Bye, have a great time.